All right guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're gonna kick off a new series specifically focused around bug out bags, get home bags, 72-hour kits, whatever you may wanna call them. But in this video for today, we're gonna focus specifically on the 3 B's of optional carry. We're gonna talk about bags, buckets, and bins. So let's jump in. Okay guys, so as I said, we're gonna jump in today and specifically talk about 3 options for carrying your kit. Now again, as I said before, many people may refer to this as a 72-hour kit, a bug out bag, a get home bag. There's different ways that this kit could be utilized. But for this particular video, we wanna focus on options for what to put this kit in. Now, one of the things as we start to consider this is portability and travel options, right? Because if we've got to get out of our house quickly, or we've got to be able to throw things in a car and go, the ability to grab it and go quickly is one of the key things first and foremost. Now, so when we think about that, most options, and this is why they're referred to as bug out bags, usually bags is one of the easiest things to grab and go, right? A backpack, you can grab a simple backpack like this. This is my 72-hour kit that I've got. So it could be a simple backpack like this. It could be an old school backpack, right? So depending on the kids, you could just have an old school backpack that you or your kids could use for that. Or you could even go up into some nicer options where you've got a small backpack that's more for backpacking and those kind of things. So when we get into this, there are several options when we get into the bags themselves. Now, key is you find what's right for you. There's no perfect answer for any of these things. It's really going to come down to what works best for you and your situation, okay? So first off, as we talk about bag options, again, we just mentioned a couple there. We think about simple backpacks that we can put enough gear and or food in that will sustain us for approximately 72 hours. Ideally, as we know, 72 hours is the minimum recommended from FEMA and those kind of situations. But we've also seen in the past with Katrina and other disasters that 72 hours may not be enough. So again, these are things to consider as you look at options when you consider a system or a layered approach potentially also when creating your bug out kits. So you could have a backpack as one option, and that's going to give you portability. It's going to give you a good, easy way to throw it in your car and go, or throw it on your bag if you've got to travel by walking or by bike, things like that to consider, depending on the scenario. Now, another option, of course, is also to look at buckets. Now, again, you can get a simple bucket. You could get something as simple as getting an old empty paint can, right, or an old empty paint bucket, and let the paint dry out, peel it out, clean it out good, and you could always put all your stuff inside a trash bag inside there, whatever works for you, but you don't have to go spend a lot of money. That's the biggest thing. You can go get an old Home Depot bucket, right? One of the things to consider as you look at options is how you want to enclose that. So one of the things I like is this Gamma Seal lids. So this gives you an option to be able to put the ring on and then this screws on. So those are just things to consider as you start looking at how you want to carry it. Now, if you've got a backpack as one option, you could also have a bucket as a second option for other equipment and or gear that you may want to put in there. Now, as we look at the third option, that is when we start getting into bigger bins, right? So you think about these big old Costco bins like this, right? And these are great when you start looking at, I'm going to get out of Dodge, but I want to have a lot of equipment and capabilities with me, and I'm going to be traveling by a car or a truck or some type of a vehicle that allows me not only to grab my backpack and or a bucket, but I can also grab bins that have other options with me. And that's why, like I said, this is to me an important aspect of how I approach it from more of a system or a layered approach, where I can have a minimal in my backpack. If I really have to get out quickly, that's the minimum I want to be able to grab. But then if I've got time and availability, depending on the scenario, I can grab a bucket that's got other equipment in it, or I can grab a bin or multiple bins depending on what my situation is. Okay? And this is why when we get into the 72-hour kit or bug out bag, we can discuss how we want to carry that and what our dynamic is. Okay, so let's touch on that for just a minute, and then we'll do some follow-up videos specifically on some of these other areas. First and foremost, of course, also is once you start looking at how to prepare your kit, you want to look at your particular area, right? So for me, because I live more in a warmer and desert environment, I'm not concerned so much about getting snow and those kind of things that I've got to consider putting in really thick clothing. Now it does get cooler here at different points throughout the year, but for me, most cases, a lighter jacket or a jacket might be all I need in most situations. If I want to put some heavier gear in there, that's something I can potentially include in a bigger bin or things like that. So you have to consider what's your environment, right? What's the weather going to be like? What's the time of year when you start considering? Those are things to look at. And we'll get into, again, some of these as we go through some of the follow-up videos, getting into more detail as we look at the 72-hour kit that I've prepared and some of the options between my bag, what I carry in my bins, and those kind of things as well. Now, as we said, one of the other aspects of this 72-hour kit or bug out bag is portability. Okay, and that's something to always be considerate of, is how are you going to have to travel with this gear or equipment? Are you going to be traveling in a vehicle? If that's the case, then you may have lots of room to be able to put all kinds of stuff in, and that's okay. If you've got the time and availability, that gives you options. But things to think about and consider is how do you want to make sure you grab everything, right? Things that you can look at will be checklists that you could have to say, I've got these basic things that I want to throw in my car if an emergency happens. The other thing you got to consider, of course, is always key, and that is your specific family dynamic. Now, when we have people talk about this bug out bag or those kind of things, one of the things that it's always interests me is it makes you seem like people are just going to be like, I'm going to be bugging out all by myself. Now, for most of us, that's not going to be the case. Most of us have a family situation. We've got either a spouse, we've got parents, we've got grandparents, we've got kids, right? Things like that we have to consider, even pets. So as we start to look at options, as we consider these kits, things we need to take into consideration are, again, do we have children that are going to be traveling with this? What type of age are they? Are they infants? Are they toddlers? Are they teenagers? Those are all things to consider as we start comparing and considering how we want to carry and what we want to put our gear and equipment in. And again, if they're old enough, they would have their own bag. So we would have a bag for each individual based on their needs, based on their age, based on their scenario, that would provide them with the basic things that they might need. So these are all things that we want to continue to talk through as we go into some of the videos. But also testing out and or trying out or learning how to use some of this gear is also important as you start considering putting your kit together. Because if you've got all the gear, but you have no idea how to use it, then when it comes down to the crunch time of being able to figure out how to use it for you and your family, it's going to be tough. So having opportunities to go out and to experience it, use it, learn how those tools and those things work is also part of the key things to knowing how to use those particular equipment. Now, part of that for me is the fun. I get to go out and I get to go camping. I get to go do things with friends and family to be able to use some of this equipment and learn how to use it together. I love going out with my older boys. I've gone out several times, and with my younger girls now that are starting to come to that point where we can go out and do some camp outs and fun things together. So again, in this series, we're going to follow back up with some other videos. We'll talk through some of what's in my kit. We'll do reviews on some of this gear. We'll go through the details and information of what that gear is used for, why we would want to consider this versus other options. All right, guys, thanks again for joining us for this video. I hope you found some value as we talked just briefly about bags, buckets, and bin options. As we consider how we want to put these kits together and carry them, these options are going to be some key elements to consider. If you want to learn more about some different gear possibilities, especially thinking about tactical versus practical, please check out my video above. If you want to learn more about first aid options and capabilities for building out first aid kits, please consider the other video above. Again, thank you for joining us and appreciate your support. Please share this with other like-minded as we build this preparedness community. Thanks, guys.